Okay, so today we're talking about some data structures, but it happens that the most basic data structures are also literals. And what that means is that you can just type something and have an object. Like, you can just type that symbol and I can say like array equals, and then use the square brackets. And I can say array.class, array.object ID, and this is like a full class object, just like something would be if you used a class and said new. So I can say like classic array equals array.new, and then this behaves the same way. So typically to create an object, you're going to name a class and then say new. But with literals, you don't have to do that. And so that is like a convenience that is kind of like a shortcut for these things that you use all the time. So some other literals are hash. Just a quick intro here before I explain these things. String, and you can also do a single quoted string, and actually it converted it to double quoted here, but you are allowed to instantiate it with a literal single quote. And then there's also like integers and floats, which are numbers that have a decimal point. Now, if you want to do one that's less than 0, you can't just do that. You have to actually say 0 point whatever. So let's get back to an array. An array is basically like it's a container that holds an ordered list of things, and each thing in the array can be any object. It doesn't matter what size or what type it is. Also, arrays can hold any number of things. There's not a limit. Like in most languages, you have to start off by deciding how big something is going to be and how big the things that it can hold are. But in Ruby, it just says this is an object. Doesn't matter how big it is or what it is. It can fit and it can go anywhere. So one of the ways that you put something into an array is by using this double angle bracket. It's kind of like an arrow that shoves something in there. And you can keep doing that, and it will just put it on the end of the array. To get things out of the array, you can use these square brackets and say what part of the array it's in. So Ruby uses what's called zero-indexed arrays, which means that the first thing in the array is number 0, not number 1. So if I say, what's the first thing here? It says 1. When I say 2, that's actually the third thing. And then when I look at this array again, they're still there. So you can take out as many copies as you want, and it still will hold on to them. If you want to take something out, you can use this classic terminology, push, pop, which is kind of like pushing something into a container or popping it off. So pop will give you the last thing. If you want to grab onto the first thing, then there's an equivalent pair called shift and unshift. So if I said array.shift, actually I think, yeah. And then array.unshift 6. Then the array now got something pushed into the front there. So if you want to use something that's like a list of things that you're going to use in sequence, aka a stack or a queue, then these methods, push, pop, shift, and unshift, give you what you want. And instead of having to create a stack or create a queue, you can just use a basic array, and it will do exactly what you need. A hash See, you can't just type hash. The reason that this popped up is because earlier I assigned this object to this variable. So that's why that is. A hash is indexed similarly to, or accessed, I should say, similarly to an array. You can say hash 2 equals second. And then hash. So instead of keeping things in order, hash names things, and it says you can get something out as long as you know its name. It's kind of like a dictionary in that sense, and the name for this object in other languages such as Python is a dictionary. So a hash can hold, like an array, can hold any number of things. Hash at 3 equals triple. And it doesn't keep them in order. Now, I don't mean to be misleading by using 2 and 3 here to suggest that they're, you know, that they're second and third. It keeps them, you know, wherever it's going to keep them. And actually, arcane detail number 1, the reason it's called a hash is because it takes the object that is used as the key, which is the word that the first part, this is the key and this is the value. So when you put something into a hash, it takes the key and it performs this mathematical operation on it called a hashing algorithm to come up with like a storage space which is numeric. And the reason it does that is because you can key things on any object, like it doesn't have to be a number, right? And it doesn't have to be a string. It can be any object. You can key it on this array that we have up here. And then here it shows that this array is actually the key that you would have to give it in order to get that object out. Let's see if we can do that now, actually. Yeah. So that's a hash. It can store things. Any object can be used as a key. Any object can be the value. And it can tell you things like its length, I believe. It can tell you, well, stuff like this. But if you try to do something like push or pop, it will say, I don't know what you're talking about because I don't know what's first and what's last. Okay, so next I want to go on to strings. So string equals words. Okay, so string can tell you its length. You can use the same kind of indexing that you would in an array. So this will give you the third letter, although it actually gives you the numeric code, like the ASCII code for that letter, I guess in this case. Another cool thing you can do is index it with a regular expression. Now, a regular expression is like a pattern that it knows when it has found the pattern, and it can capture certain parts of what it matched. So if I were to say string, use the bracket, and then use the regular expression, literal, and say match the part that says word, then it will give me back the part of that string that matches that pattern.